I feel like we're living in Industrial Revolution Part 2 or something. I just turned 38 this summer, and there are things happening within the last year that it's amazing to witness and especially to kind of be a part of. I have such a love for this industry, and so all of those experiences collectively have made me very unapologetically pro-extractive industries, very pro-mining, like no apologies, no mince words. I got to see what young people know or perceive about our industry, and then I realized maybe we haven't done a great job kind of communicating this to them because they are completely off base with some of these ideas. I hate to break it to everybody, I'm breaking the fourth wall. The public perception right now is not great. I was getting more anti-use of AI comments than anti-mining comments. I couldn't find a black female geologist, to be completely frank. Why aren't we represented? Just dig it. Make mining sexy again.
Welcome to another episode of Oratory. I am Lindsey, Schultz, your host, and today I have my lovely friend Elizabeth Freeman of Nuna with us. Today we're going to talk about all kinds of really cool stuff, and I have sort of artificially named this Storyteller from the Core. So Elizabeth Freeman on mining, messaging, and meaning. I'm really excited for it, and I'm glad that you're all joining us. And so Elizabeth is the founder of Nuna and a visionary who's redefining how we talk about extractive industries. From gold mines of Alaska to AI-driven storytelling, Elizabeth has worn many helmets. Geologist, educator, and entrepreneur, and her work is transforming public perception of mining. She brings a human lens to the technical world, helping companies share their stories with creativity, accuracy, and care. If you're in mining, energy, or simply care about the future of responsible resource development, this episode will be for you. And hey, if you enjoy our conversation, don't forget to rate the show, leave a review, and follow Elizabeth on LinkedIn, Instagram, and at her website, Nuna Media. And all of those will be linked here shortly. So, with no further ado, welcome, Miss Elizabeth.
I'm so excited for this.
Me too. So, many of you may know that we always chat behind the scenes. And so Elizabeth and I have already been having a million tangents this morning. So I will try to keep us focused. But as we really launch into our conversation, my favorite first question, what is getting you excited about your work?
How quickly AI is advancing. So full disclosure, I use a lot of generative AI and the assets that I create for not only Nuna, but for my clients, more importantly. And it's just wild to me. I feel like we're living in Industrial Revolution Part 2 or something. I just turned 38 this summer, and there are things happening within the last year that it's amazing to witness and especially to kind of be a part of. So I'd say I'm just excited for the next drop, who's going to drop the next cool AI tool that I get to play with.
Well, I love that. And, we also play with it quite a bit, but not nearly as creatively as you do. And so I see some of the assets that are out there that you've developed, and I'm like, oh my God, that's really cool. I was trying to develop a very simple intro slide for a panel I'm about to do. And I was like, why is this so hard? So I have not mastered it, so I'm going to have to learn from you. But I think part of what I really enjoy about talking to you every time is that you have a really interesting lens, right? You've worked across production and exploration, and you've been an educator. And so between your experiences in those, how is that really shaping the way that you tell stories for the mining industry?
I love that. I have such a love and passion for this industry, and so all of those experiences collectively have made me very unapologetically pro-extractive industries, very pro-mining, no apologies, no mince words, because I've had so many amazing people, so many amazing projects that I kind of want to give back, do my part, I guess, to say thank you to an industry that's done right by me. So I don't really have any bad words to say about it in that way. We all have our healthy critique, but as far as promoting it to other people, especially people outside of the sector, I've seen the best of what this industry can be. I really do believe that in many, many ways, from the GMs to the people that I've worked with in the core shacks, from the environmentalists, stewardship, I find that I take it really personally when people say negative things about mining because I know so many people in the industry who I know that's contradictory to, you know what I'm like? And I'm like, they're not like that, so don't, Yeah, I would definitely say. And then I think the blind spots, being able to identify maybe where we could be improving, because once I went into education, especially resource education, I got to see what young people know or perceive about our industry. And then I realized, like, ooh, maybe we haven't done a great job kind of communicating this to them because they are completely off base with some of these ideas. So I definitely think my advocacy and my just heart for this, and then also kind of using those experiences to figure out where we could have some improvements.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned young people, right? And so I have two kids, and even in spite of working in the mining industry, I've found I do a really poor job about educating them about it. Every year now, I do like a work with mom day, and I work from home, so this is a little tricky. But with my younger son, a friend of mine, and we do something mining related every year. And so we've gone to like mining museums, we've done stuff like that. And so like now he has sort of like, he thinks I work at the mining museum, so that's a little bit misleading, but really cool nonetheless. But I'm like, listen, it's really important because they then get to understand, like, where does modern life come from? How is this being impacted? Like, what makes the world go round? And in my perspective, so much of that is mining. It goes into healthcare, it goes into how we build our houses, it goes into infrastructure, like very, very essential things. And so it was really important for me to do a better job of that. And I still realize that I fail and like need to do more. When I get to talk to young people at conferences or at universities, and even less than that at various fairs or things that we volunteer for, I learn something from them every single time. And part of my mission with this podcast, part of my mission with my work is to like help break the silo that we talk to one another in and figure out how to go beyond that. And it's so hard. Like we get so like sucked into this little area that we work in. And so young people are magical, and I think we should be listening to them and paying attention to them, figuring out how to talk to them. So I love that you're integrating that into what you're doing, and education I think is so important from that perspective. But what are some of the things that we should be conscious of in terms of how to communicate with them from your perspective? And I know that this is like totally a different question than
No, I love this. Yes, I'm like, I have answers about this, but
Yay!
I do definitely think we have to take ourselves a little less seriously. I kind of make the joke all the time with certain circles, but our industry, and petroleum to a lesser extent, is like, we don't want to have a TikTok because what if our image is not favorable? And it's like, I hate to break it to everybody. I hate to break it to everybody. I'm breaking the fourth wall.
Please do.
The public perception right now is not great. So to me, as a marketer, and you can probably back this up too, but it's like, what do we have to lose? I know we have investors, and they are valued and very important for all this to work. Like, I'm a geologist. Without investors, you're like, who's paying for these projects? But I do think, especially with this generation, it's so important to come with some authenticity. And I think we have those tools now at our disposal to do that. So it's kind of a bummer to not seeing a little more risk, because I'm like, we're a risky, group. We like to kind of take the leap. So I'm like, in this way, there could be, people who are at the forefront of that to show other companies, hey, it's okay to have a TikTok. It's okay to have your CEO more forward facing on Instagram. But it's going to take a few companies, especially bigger companies, I think, to lead that way and kind of signal that it's okay.
To make it okay.
Yeah, because I think we are a follow leader kind of thing too, which again is not a bad thing, but I think once the bigger players do it, then the juniors will say, okay, we can follow suit. So I just want to see a little more risk taking in that regard. And you see the return. So a lot of the stuff that I've put out on TikTok that's hip and cool from my elder millennial mindset was well
You and me
received.
both.
Right, was well received by the next generation, and I was really surprised because I was getting more anti-use of AI comments than anti-mining comments. So I think that's
Interesting.
really telling and interesting, but I
That
think
is
I always say it's
interesting.
not what we're saying, it's how we're saying it. So
I agree with that. And
yeah.
it's fascinating to me that with the idea that we could be more risky, right, and be more authentic, that we would drive better results, because everybody's like this is the mold, we have to fit in it and conform, and this needs to be something that everybody can understand and appreciate. But with that, you lose all ability to like relate, right? And sometimes that's the part, that's the hook, I think. And being authentic and saying like, I don't have all the answers, and going into utilizing AI or social media or other stuff and talking about what we do to get additional interest or investment seems like, hey, if you can get somebody and say like, I don't know what I'm doing with the social media stuff, I'm exploring it, I don't have to have all the answers, like then people are like, huh, this is interesting, and like they're telling a story and I've never heard this, and like buy into it. I think it's a really fascinating way of thinking about how to retell our stories out into the marketplace. So I like the idea of weaving in authenticity and like hitting it from that spot, because it is counterintuitive for so many people that run companies. But like, I think most of the time we're doing the best that we can and learning on the fly anyway. So we might as well be real about it.
Right, and I guess that's kind of where my passion for this comes from too, is that, like I said at the beginning, like I've had nothing but positive experiences. Like
Yeah.
I beat the drum for mining when people probably aren't even asking me to, but it's because, like I said, mining is done right by me. I've had a great career. I've met some incredible human beings, been to some amazing places, around Alaska because of that. Was able to teach young people about it. I've had no bad experiences. I've been really lucky. So because of that, I feel like I want to show that. I want to show the positives. We have enough people focusing on negative stuff in the industry, and that's great. We do need to have people who are critical and keeping us on our toes, but I also think we need cheerleaders, and I feel like I want to just be that. I'll leave the harder topics to other people, but I just want to be out there smiling like, this is cool, this is great. We need more of this, and here are some of the positives that I've experienced. And I try to kind of weave that into all the content that I make so people see that it's coming from a place of positivity and not necessarily all the things we don't do right.
Yeah. Well, being solutions oriented and being positive and creating that energy, I think is really important, right? Because there is a time to solve problems and to be serious and to say, like, these are some big issues that we need to work out. But, it's a balance. And I think we're cognizant of the stuff that we need to do better. And I think we're all very actively working on trying to address some of that stuff. But in terms of telling a story, I think it's nice to have the other side of it. And I'm very conscious when we do panels or when we do presentations that like we should be presenting more solutions than we should be presenting issues, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
not try to leave these things unsolved. Let's talk about what we could do, because that I think is motivating and provides energy for other people to also get on that bandwagon and help solve that problem,
Right.
versus say like womp womp, everything's going downhill
Right. I mean, what
and
leaves
be
some
really a
hope? I
downer.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think as a geo, that's kind of my thing. Cause like, I always joke from like a selfish reason, I want this industry to do well because I'd like to stay gainfully employed for many, many years to come.
Yeah.
I have a personal vested interest in seeing this do well. But also, I live in a state that is extremely not mine dependent, but I mean, we're an extractive state. Petroleum and mining is a huge revenue source for our state. So it's advantageous to us to make sure that people are on board with this because this is kind of what keeps our economy going. So I think you attract more flies with honey is kind of a saying that my grandma used to say from growing up. So that's my approach. But I do know that we can't always do rose colored glasses. And I understand
Yeah.
that we can't just sit there and also applaud and pat ourselves on the back all the time either. There,
Yeah.
like you said, there is a healthy balance. But I do think there's enough voices out there, especially on LinkedIn and stuff, who that is their mission to kind
Yeah.
of tackle some of those things. So I said, they've got that handled. Nuna will focus on bringing the humor, bringing the connectivity, and making this a little more fun and happy.
Yeah. Well, I think you do a great job of it. And I mean, you certainly exude that from like a personal standpoint as well. So, something that we talked about offline is like it takes all kinds, right? Like we have all these different people that are influencing communications and mining, and you have the version that you're putting out there. And I think it's really, really lovely. But I also think like grounded in science and geology and having this backbone to the content that you're creating and how you're doing marketing is really important. But it also gives you a really interesting perspective. And so like, what blind spots do you notice in terms of like how extractive industries are presenting themselves to the public? Like, what could they be doing better? What are they not seeing because they're living in this silo?
I love that. One of the things I always say is they don't boast enough. That goes back to the kind of exposure issue or whatever you want to call it, but the visibility problem. But there are so many awesome things, and I am lucky enough to belong to trade organizations. I hear about a lot of things that we're doing right, but I'm like, where was the billboard about that? Where was the commercial for that? I think some of the blind spots that we have, we think we're more visible in some ways than we are, or we think public perception is different than it is. I don't know. But I do think there's a disconnect between what's happening on the mine site and what's actually being discussed around a kitchen table or during an election cycle when people are talking about whether they should vote for a mining initiative or not. Those are very disconnected conversations. The other thing, companies kind of have their plan. We want to get this many ounces. We want to, open by this time. Their corporate plan. And sometimes that can be a little different than communications. Companies need to kind of align their overall vision with their comms, because I think sometimes those can be really disjointed, and that's where you lose an audience. I hope maybe they have a bigger budget, some of these companies, for communications.
Well, and sometimes it doesn't require a huge budget from my perspective. Like, I really love small, incremental, like chipping away at something. And that gives you the opportunity to not necessarily know the destination, but like keep getting there and reiterating what the story is, how you talk to people, like what you're learning from the audience that you're talking to. And I think that this works, being sort of in recruitment and HR and trying to build teams and organizations all the time. Like, communication is the first part. It's the first part about when we go out into the field and do exploration. If we're not talking to the people around the project, you're already losing the audience. So like, we need to be thinking about how we communicate there. We need to be thinking about how we package up our organizations to then attract talent to the industry. And I think something that we've talked about in the background through WIM, through other stuff, is that like the idea of creating companies that attract some of that talent and retain that recognition, belonging, etc., is really, really important for us, because not only do we have a relatively public perception, that doesn't help us attract talent, that doesn't help us retain talent. So recognition, belonging, etc., are so important. How do you think that we can do better to celebrate people behind the work and talk about that as well? I mean, I think that's something that you're probably aptly qualified to talk about.
Absolutely. I think I'm always like, more ads. But honestly, one of the things I will shout out, and again, I've only ever worked as a geologist in Alaska, full disclosure, so I can't speak on other places, but I love our state. We do it better than a lot of other places on a lot of levels. So what I've seen is companies investing in the nonprofits of their employees in like a celebratory fashion of like, this is something that's meaningful to you, we'll match your donations. That's really great. Something that I've seen from a local company up here that I really respect, was just like donating to the local baseball team. Alaska's sports seasons are relatively short, but we do have them. But people care about their kids and their families at the end of the day. I noticed that's one of the things I think is so beautiful about our industry, and what like kind of binds us all together, is because we were all doing it for that pretty much same reason. But if a company can speak to those things, so like, there's a local softball team in your town that this mine is in, chances are some of your employees probably have kids that play on that softball team. If they need new gear, donate it to them. There's a lot of initiatives that I don't think are super intense or spendy, but it's just kind of what things matter to your employees and how can you honor them. And I know their families are usually their most important thing, which is great if a company can show that. Another thing would be when I met so many guys that had worked underground for like 30 years, and you're just like, whoa, you need a plaque somewhere. And like, I'm making jokes, but like, I think something would be appropriate in some places. But Anchorage has an airport, and I have seen some of this marketing collateral recently, but on the screens, we have so many mines in Alaska. I think we're up to 7 now with Manchow. So it's like being able to say like, hey, this is Bob. Bob's been working here for 30 years. Little things like that. I'm always floored by how much just a public recognition of somebody means to them, just those shout out or whatever. So I wonder if there could be ad campaigns by certain companies. And I know there has been a couple I've seen recently, just like I am so-and-so, like I am mining. I think those are
Yeah.
great if they get out to a larger audience. If
Yeah.
they just
We have
stay
to break
circulating
beyond.
within the mining community, I don't think that's necessarily the recognition we're trying to achieve. But I
Yeah.
think when it gets outside of our circle into the masses and they can see that you're honoring your people,
Yeah.
that's a bigger conversation. So it's like, I think what they're doing is not wrong. I just think they need to maybe expand some of those campaigns to where they're reaching a larger audience, because that's what you really want the public to see is, hey, we have amazing people and we are taking the time to like
Yeah.
highlight that in just a bigger way.
Well, I love that you said that because, sometimes a thank you just goes such a long way.
Yes.
And you and I are both entrepreneurs and have clients and get a check. But like you said, like sometimes it's the feedback that like re-energizes you to like keep moving.
Yeah.
And so like a thank you for somebody who's worked underground or who's influenced changing a technology or something like that and saying like, this is really cool and this is why. That story is so awesome to tell. And that person I'm sure would feel like, oh, me? No
Yeah,
way,
to see
because
yourself,
we
we
minimize
are
it.
TV culture. We are TV culture.
Yeah.
And to see yourself, even like when I see myself in marketing collateral for other stuff, like I was asked to be in an ad for something and it was wild, like just to see
Yeah.
yourself on TV, you know what I mean? So I can't imagine somebody who's been working at a company for decades sees themselves on a commercial for a local mining company. They'd be like, that's me. Their wife would say, hey, or
That's
spouse,
right.
I just, that kind of stuff, I really do think it's wild how far that goes.
Yeah, I agree. One other thing, like we just talked about a little bit, like I just threw in entrepreneurial, so that makes me want to say, like, what sort of made you go down that path? You've done exploration, you've done like education, you're still working on your master's degree. Like, what made you decide, like, hey, I need to create Nuna?
Yeah, I love that. I finally have whittled my answers down, so I hope I don't get too long-winded. But it kind of the idea was born during the off season. I was working for Con Professional Services. Shout out Bill. He's a mentor of mine. I've known him for many, many years, but love the guy. And I was doing projects. We have a short exploration season, so come December, it was kind of like see you in May. And I was like, well, I could kind of just sit around, but I was like, I don't want to do that. So I asked him, how can I be of use to you? I want to always be your go-to gal. So he said, well, I got this LinkedIn page. We don't really do anything with it, but it'd be kind of nice maybe if we started kind of tending to it or whatever. And they had a Facebook too, I think. So I said, I'll give it a stab at that. I started running his social media pages and doing that to great fanfare. Everybody loved it because they were like, oh, you have a
It's
Facebook
different.
now. So it was great. And that kind of lit the, little 10-10 off in my brain and said, hey, you could actually probably keep doing this, because then other companies were coming to me saying, well, I don't do my LinkedIn, or I don't have any followers. Can you help me gain my
Yeah.
followers? And I said, sure. I really like the idea of a for us, by us. You and I are relatively the same age. So I think when I
Yep.
make the FUBU reference, like that's the
Yep.
litmus test. I'm like, how old are you? But some
I know
people,
what you're talking about.
so if you don't know what FUBU is, please Google it. But
Yes.
for us, by us marketing is kind of where Nuna evolved into, because I thought, well, who better to run a
Yeah.
mining Facebook page than someone who's worked on a mine? Like, because
Yeah.
I get your audience, because
Yeah.
it was kind of, it made sense. And then the AI stuff started because I couldn't find a black female geologist, to be completely frank. I remember I was looking for an asset, trying to make something, looking at stock footages, just for geologists in general, I think.
Yeah.
But you could find like lab coats and like weird stuff. And I was like, we actually don't wear any of that unless you're in the assay lab or something. But I was like,
Yeah. Right.
why aren't we represented? Like if I type black female geologist, I'm not going to get a photo unless I give you a photo of myself or whatever, like
Yeah.
we do exist, but just not in the media. AI actually, and I'll give a talk about this here in a little bit, but it kind of started kicking off around when Nuna was founded last year. So it was actually like perfect timing. And so I got to kind of evolve my business along with those tools as those tools kept evolving, and staying at the forefront of that evolution has been really advantageous, because then Nuna can kind of market itself. Hopefully Nuna can be something a little different. I think traditional marketing is usually done by people who are marketers, which is great. But to have somebody who has a little bit of the business acumen tied into the technical components of geology, I thought could be really beneficial. So that was kind of where that was born.
I just made a little pop-up happen, and I'm always thrilled when I get technology to work. So like, you're talking about AI and I'm like clicking a button. So
No, this is, hey.
I'm a different kind of millennial than you are.
No, this is amazing. You're killing it.
Well, recognizing that we have sort of a hard stop coming up because Elizabeth gets to go and do an AI presentation in just a moment. I have so enjoyed having you. One of the things that I want to leave us off with is like more for fun. But if geology were a brand, what would its tagline be?
Okay, I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and it's super nerdy. Just dig it. I think it needs to be something short and sexy. I'm
like
also
it.
campaigning, make mining sexy again. We'll make hats. But it needs to be something short. I'm also a Real Housewives fan. Probably shouldn't say that out loud, but they do like little taglines at the beginning of the show. And I envision like petroleum having its own tagline and like mining having its own tagline because it needs to be
It's
something
short
that
and
sticks in
snappy.
people's
I love
head.
it.
Yeah.
Like, make mining sexy again. I think a lot of people would wear that on their hard hat. And several years ago, we did a sticker that said that, and everyone took them. I've never made a sticker since. Actually, Jess Scanlon designed them for me.
Bring them back. But I think
Make
about
it
like
fun.
certain like military, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Like there are so many other industries that have
Yeah.
visibility issues that we do, but they
Yeah.
make sexy ads. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why can't we do that?
I
At
agree.
least try it.
I'm totally on board with that. So I will, we need a mining fund to do this cool stuff. So like
Yes.
maybe that's the next creation and then we can tagline everything. So
Yes,
I love
yes.
that. But you guys can find Elizabeth at all of her places. So I'm showing more thingies. So here I am being technologically. So if you're just listening, you're missing out on all of this. But you will find it linked in all of our stuff. And I appreciate everybody for being here and Elizabeth for sharing your awesome insight and knowledge and making mining sexy again. And for those of you who are listening, rate, follow, share, whatever with us. And we'll do this again soon. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And, we'll do this again and enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you, listeners.
Thank you so much, everybody.